of organization to use to terrorize voters. This is...
2 points. What are you saying? That you will not engage in, let's say, they say it takes money to be able to run a campaign, even if it's not for purposes of buying votes, just for the organization, your watchers, for example, no? The organization people that are going to distribute your sample ballots and things like that. How are you going to fund that if you say that you're not going to engage in those same kinds of tactics?
Now, first of all, let's start always with what the law says. The law says, the election code, that a candidate, particularly for presidential office, is allowed to spend a certain sum for every voter. So we got to ask ourselves, how many voters are there in the country today? According to the census office, apparently about 30 million. But of the 30 million, only about 25 or 20 are expected to go to the polls. If that is the case, we must multiply the ceiling set by the election code by the number of voters. This ceiling is 3 pesos. 1 peso 50 centavos on the part of the candidate and an equivalent amount on the part of the political party to which he belongs. So 2 amounts of the same figure, 1 peso 50 centavos, comes to 3 pesos per voter. 30 million times 3 pesos is 90 million. That is the legal ceiling. Yet these candidates are going around Metro Manila openly boasting that they are prepared to spend 1 billion to 28 billion pesos for the elections, flying exactly in the face of this legal provision. What kind of president will these people make? They have not even been elected president yet, and they are already indicating with impunity how they shall violate the law. Now, what I am saying is, I will try very hard to raise 90 million pesos from financial contributors precisely as allowed by the election code. And yet at the same time, I will try very hard to convince the COMELEC to exercise its constitutional power of recommendation to the Congress so that it will recommend that Congress should raise the ceiling on at least on presidential campaigns, because 90 million is simply unrealistic.
Are you confident that you can raise whatever it is that will be required or authorized in order to make a go of this?
Oh yes, definitely. Because there are certain set sectors of our society that are habituated to making financial contributions. In other words, big business knows that it has to underwrite the cost of an election in any democratic system. This happens everywhere in the world. This is not peculiar to the Philippines by any means. And a businessman or a business group that has been traditionally making contributions to presidential candidates already has a fixed modus operandi for this. In the first place, disabuse yourself of the impression that they will give money only to one candidate. They'll give money to 2 or 3 candidates, sometimes even to everybody if they can afford it.
Okay. All right. When we come back from this break, I'd like to go to the second portion, which is that the practitioners of a pragmatic brand of politics keep on talking about organizations on the grassroots. Let's talk about that when we come back. Okay, now on this question of those that practice a pragmatic form of politics and talk about grassroots organization, these are the people that are going to be out there on election day, actually making sure that the votes that are registered for you are actually counted. No? How fast is the People's Reform Party moving in that direction? I mean, some people are saying it's not really that easy to build an organization, and secondly, it's too late to build an organization. What is your response to that?
If I listen to all of these cynics, I would be paralyzed into self-hysteria. But the thing is that we've been organizing since 1990 last year, when I first left the government. We organized the Movement for Responsible Public Service, our civic crusade against graft and corruption. This movement already has 250,000 registered members. And when we filed an application with COMELEC in April 12 of this year for registration of the People's Reform Party, almost automatically we had about 180,000 movers members simultaneously apply for membership also with the People's Reform Party. So as of this date, even as I speak to you, we have 180,000 members.
Okay, now let's talk about what you would like to do and what the issues probably will be in 1992. We don't have much time, so I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important problem that you are going to tackle first thing as soon as you reach Malacanang?
Well, there has to be a two-pronged approach immediately. The president cannot afford to prioritize and take his time going down his shopping list. So there are two things that the president must address with a sense of urgency. The first is the peace and order situation, and second, and concurrently, the second item on the agenda is the economy.
Okay, let's go with the economy, because peace and order, we've talked about that already a little bit. But economy, when you talk about the economy, and poverty, of course, being the most important problem there, the problem, what is the first, give me an example of one project that you would immediately implement in order to lift that particular problem.
I would immediately enhance the export trade. I would shorten the exclusion list in the present Foreign Investment Incentives Act of 1991.
Export in particularly what areas? Are you thinking of any particular area that you would like to grow faster than others, or is it going to be a broad-based, wide approach to export?
Export in general, simply to bring foreign exchange into the country. In fact, the approach should be three-pronged, not only to promote exports, but also to liberalize the investment climate and to develop tourism, because these are the three quick routes for attracting foreign exchange.
Would you go so far as to devalue Philippine currency in order to make our exports cheaper and therefore probably generate more exports?
Promoting the export trade is not a simple matter of tinkering with the exchange rate. To promote the export trade, we must supply at least four factors. We must factor four elements into the equation. The first is the supply of credit. The second is technology. The third is marketing assistance, and the fourth is bureaucratic support. So you would not immediately, because some people have counseled that maybe one of the quickest ways to do it is just kind of devalue the currency in order to attract further exports, to make us more competitive in the international market. You don't think that's necessary? It would be helpful, but it's extremely superficial. Okay. In order to fight the poverty problem, some people have been saying that there's too much of our national budget that is being devoted to debt service, almost 40% of that. Would you agree, or would you even bat for, let us say, a debt cap? Would you bat for, let us say, a selective repudiation of debts, particularly the so-called behest loans? Would you do something about the foreign debt to kind of reduce the amount that's being paid for our foreign creditors, not to mention domestic creditors, and use that money for projects here in this country? But first, let's clarify the debt question. The debt burden of the country has two components, the foreign debt and the domestic debt. Now, it is not widely known that the total debt burden, to a large extent, consists not of the foreign but of the domestic debt. Domestic debt accounts for about 70% of the total debt burden. Only 30% consists of the foreign debt. So, it is not a solution to the debt problem as a whole to advocate that we must renege on our debts. And I'm strongly opposed as a lawyer to this position. I am opposed to a debt moratorium or to a debt cap. Because when we were in law school, Dong, and we were at about the same time too, we were immediately taught when we were taking contracts in freshman or sophomore year that the linchpin of the judicial system is the principle